who said that they were going to be available. I know that Kim wanted to join us today, but had said that it was late notice and she had something else going on, so she won't be joining us. And I also don't see Heather, but she might be on here. So I think we are probably good to start then, Dr. Ahart, if you want to go ahead and start with your team.
Yes. So as the board understands, we've been working on our plan to return to learn for this fall for the 2021 school year. Very energetically, really since last March. The conditions around COVID-19 continue to I was going to say evolve. I'm not sure that's the right term, but continue to change. So we were poised to submit our plan, such as was required by the Department of Education, on July 1st. We did that timely. Right before that, the Department of Education provided what at the time they claimed was the final guidance from the state on return to learn. So we shortly thereafter, we announced our plan to the community, and we had a number of community engagement sessions to both help our community understand what their options were, how each of those options would play out, and at the same time get feedback from our community to help us further flesh out the many remaining details in both of those plans. So we've been progressing toward last Monday when registration began, and we started registering students on Monday, a week ago tomorrow. And at this point, we have about 9,000 students registered. Those students are choosing between a fully virtual experience and a hybrid experience. And I won't recite all the details of the hybrid experience. I think you're all very familiar with that. What we were anticipating based on extensive surveying of families prior to the creation of the plan was that about 10% of our families would select fully online. With about 9,000 registrations in at this point in time, just under 30% have selected online learning. Now, I want to frame that a bit. I'm not sure why that number is just under 30% at this time. I will say that I anticipated that the families who would select all virtual would probably be quicker on the draw to registration. So I was anticipating the early numbers to show higher than 10%. So I can't say that we have a great deal of confidence that that 30% number, or roughly 30% number, will hold once we have all of our students registered. But I do think it's at the point that we're at now, with over 25% of our students having registered, that it's holding just under 30. So context. On Friday morning, the governor held a press event and announced some new rules that we are supposed to follow for return to learn. And shortly after that Friday morning press event, the Department of Education released new guidance. There are a number of stipulations in there, but the most problematic as it relates to our return to learn plan is the provision that 50% of in-person instruction 50% of instruction in the hybrid model has to take place in person. Families may still select an all virtual experience, so that part of our plan is fine. But the 50% provision is extremely problematic. Less so at elementary, more so at middle school, and to a huge degree at the high school level. Now, in rereading a number of times Senate File, I want to say it's 2310. Yeah, Senate File 2310. I am confident, and I talked with some legislative staff yesterday to confirm my my interpretation. I believe that the guidance provided by the DE on Friday does overreach a bit, in that particularly on the point of instruction, where Senate File 2310 really talks about core instruction, which is generally understood to be reading, math, social studies, and science. If that is the case, then we can make some relatively minor adjustments to our elementary hybrid plan and meet the new guidance. At middle school, that's going to be a taller order. And again, part of the reason it gets more complicated as you matriculate through the system is that there are teacher licensure requirements. So there's not as much flexibility in terms of social distancing and keeping students in one classroom socially distanced, because you do have to ensure that instruction is provided by an appropriately licensed teacher. We have that same requirement at elementary. It's just that our elementary staff are certified for all of the core areas. So if we can lower the number of students served by one teacher in one classroom, we can meet that challenge. It gets way more complicated at high school, where credits are involved, so that there's less flexibility in what students may take and still stay on track for graduation. But in addition to those particular staffing questions at middle school and high school, in Des Moines, there's a real space question. So in order to provide some reasonable modicum of physical distancing, we just really need to keep the number of students that we have in our schools at middle school and high school significantly lower than we would normally have, because our high schools are operating just about at capacity, and most of our middle schools are not far behind. So we serve a lot of students in those schools, and cutting the number in half doesn't get us all the way there. So we don't have a hard number because registration isn't finished yet, and maybe we'll be surprised. So if more families than we anticipate select fully virtual, that will help. But it would have to be a very, very high number for our middle school plan not to be adjusted pretty significantly. And at high school, frankly, the only real solution to meet that 50% requirement is to just have all of our students go back, all the students that select in person go back 5 days a week. I'm not supportive of that. I'm not suggesting we do that, but I am saying that there's some basic math here. If we have all of our students going to school every day, and we need to socially distance and can't accommodate all of those students at one time, you need to divide them into more than one group. So if you take the number of students and divide them in two, then you're close. But then you have to do everything exactly right to be able to accommodate all of those students and get half of their instruction in the time allotted. So the long and short of it is we created our return to learn plan with first prioritizing student and staff safety, and also meeting all of the guidance, all of the I shouldn't say guidance, all of the regulations that we were required to meet. And we vetted that plan with our community. We informed our community. We helped our community understand what their choices were, and we started the registration process. And then a week into it, to actual registration, the rug was pulled out from underneath us. Had a conversation with the superintendent in Iowa City again this morning. They have, you know, they're reeling. They had planned to start the year fully virtual, and have no idea how they will comply with what the new regulations are. There are other districts that are having similar struggles. Certainly in scale, we have the biggest problem. I did talk with a local legislator from our district yesterday at length. That there does not appear to be the potential for a legislative fix here. As you know, our legislature is out of session, and they're not coming back into session until, you know, something, if something would change. I suppose that could change as well, but they're not scheduled to go back into session until January. The legislature did grant the governor some significant powers that the governor doesn't always have. And so what we're faced with is either attempting to create a new plan. The new plan at elementary would likely look very, very similar to the current one, but at middle school and especially at high school, it would have to be way, way different. I don't know. I mean, I'm not at all confident that we could create a high school plan that folks would be comfortable with in terms of health and safety, and that would also meet the requirements, the new requirements coming from the governor. So one choice is to attempt that, but it would be way less safe. And then the other would be to resist these new regulations. We were told that tomorrow we will be provided the process for applying for a waiver to these regulations. So it would seem on the face of it, you know, if that's true, that would be the first step that we would take. Now, again, the granting of waivers has been something that's been done pretty reluctantly on a number of issues, calendar, etc. At the state level. These are obviously unique circumstances, so perhaps that would be different. We do not know on what basis you're allowed to apply for a waiver. Again, none of that was shared with us. We're hoping to learn what those details are tomorrow from the Department of Ed. So I guess those that's probably enough for introductory remarks. And Kirsten, if you want, I don't know if we want to get people's thinking at this time. I'm not prepared to make a specific recommendation right this minute, except to say that when we learn what the waiver process looks like, we need to give that very serious consideration.
Yeah, and I just wanted to provide some context for board colleagues. So one of the reasons I wanted to call this together quickly today was that we actually have our teams, our leadership teams from each of our buildings. We're supposed to be meeting Monday through Wednesday this coming week, so tomorrow through Wednesday, as we had talked last week in our work session. And part of that was going to be to discuss building specific plans as far as you know, what decisions we made at the building level for our kids. So I wanted to get all of your thinking around where you were at in terms of, do we apply for a waiver? Do we adjust our plans? I just wanted to get all of your thinking. Dwana and I discussed with Tom and Matt and Noelle that we felt like we wanted to move forward with our plans, but I wanted to make sure that that was the sentiment of the whole board before, you know, Tom and his team went ahead and did that.
So can I ask a couple of questions? First off, do we have any idea how long this waiver process will take? I mean, I would hate to, I don't know. I mean, obviously we did not expect this with a month left before school starts. And I mean, I don't want to then have a decision a week before school starts. So do we have any indication, Tom, would you have any guidance at all to think about how long that process would take?
That's a good question. All I would be giving you is my best guess. To frame it a bit, we weren't anticipating what we heard on Friday morning. And because they didn't already have a waiver process ready to articulate, I'm not 100% confident that we will learn what we need to learn about that process tomorrow. At the same time, it's, you know, we're over halfway through the month of July. We're about 5 weeks out from what is slated to be the first day of school. So it would seem that they would be expediting any waiver application. Yeah, so I don't really, Kelly. I'm sorry.
No, and that's fine. I didn't know. And then what happens if we don't comply? If we say we're going to stay with our plan and we don't comply?
Nobody knows. I've been trying to find, we talked about that actually. Kirsten and Dwana asked about that when we met on late Friday afternoon. I can't find anyone in government that I've been able to get a hold of in the last 36 hours that is willing to venture a guess on that. I think, you know, one thing talking about this when we are is, you know, there has been some pushback, at least from the Teachers Association in response to what was announced on Friday. I don't know if other organizations are planning on mounting some resistance to these new rules and regs. So I don't know if the landscape might change a bit politically, especially if there are a large number of districts that apply for a waiver. That helps to illustrate what the level of concern and problem there is with these new last-minute regulations. I think that's anyone's guess, but I know that you know, their districts are sort of all over the place. We were, if not the first, one of the very first to actually make our plan public and start to educate our families in detail about what the options would be. And then you have districts like Sioux City who have intentionally not announced a plan. I think in large part because they were hoping for more clarity. Not just from the governor's office and the DE, but also what conditions relative to COVID would be like in their community before, you know, till closer to the day. Another, you know, one of the most frustrating things from my perspective is, you know, there's no shortage of experts saying when you should and shouldn't have gatherings the size of what we're talking about in our schools because of the pandemic, but nobody seems to want to actually put a number to it. You know, they use words like significant transmission, you know, words that are necessarily subjective, and putting metrics in place that provide some level of predictability about when we can and can't safely hold school has been a frustration for everybody in the education community across the country. Another thing that I'm hearing was a concern to me in the new guidance, and I think is a concern to many, is once we've started the year, or even prior to the year starting, if our board was of a mind to start fully virtual because of conditions in Polk County, the board could take that action, but the Polk County Health would have to sign off on it, as would the Department of Education. And so that, to me, that gets to a question, kind of the same question about the waiver question, Kelly, that you asked earlier. What are they using as their guardrails for making those decisions and approving those local board decisions? So that's another piece that's a bit concerning.
Kind of another quick question. It may not even be that relevant. I'm just curious. Of the 9,000 who've already pre-registered, do you know by chance, I mean, maybe you have the numbers of how many elementary, middle, high school that have chosen which option, or is it pretty, it's about a 70-30 across all three levels, do you think?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it. I don't have that in front of me. I wonder if somebody on the line could look at that quick. I think Mary Grinstead, if you're on the line, if you could pull that up and share it, that would be fantastic.
Thank you.
Do you just want me to share the screen or do a snippet and put it in the chat? What would you prefer?
Why don't you do a snippet and put it in the chat?
Okay.
Hey, Tom, it's Dewana. So I shared an email with Tom just about kind of my feelings on this. I know we've talked about it as a leadership team as well, but being that I've experienced COVID, thinking I was doing all of the right things and have personally dealt with it, I know that this is a virus that really impacts people of color, no matter what age, at a higher rate than it does anybody else. And we are a district that serves students of color. That is the majority of our district. So I am very apprehensive, and I will not, and I know the district won't either, stand for anything that puts our students and staff in any type of danger. It's not fair. This is something that we don't even know what we're dealing with, and we don't even know what can come. I don't even know what I'm still dealing with. There's days I still have issues because of this virus that I think that has been inside of me, that I don't even know what I'm experiencing some days. And so I want to make sure as a district we do everything to make sure that our students and our staff are safe. And if it means that we have to think about looking at a virtual option, we do that. If this waiver works in our favor, that's great. But I have told Tom that we fight this. I do not think in any way, shape, or form that we accommodate the governor. I am not happy in the actions in which she took. I felt like this could have been done a long time ago and we wouldn't be in this situation right now. And so I am not happy with this at all. And I have told Tom that we fight. I stand with our staff and our students. I know our staff stands with us as well. And we do everything possible to make sure that they are safe during this time. So whatever that means for us, Tom, I know you'll probably give us some recommendations at some point, but I am very much about fighting this because I don't think we should comply at this point in time.
Thank you, Dwana.
Hey, Tom. So I guess I have millions of thoughts on this. I guess I'll just start with a couple of questions. If we were to comply and do 50% in person and all that, if a virus outbreak were to occur at a building, who would have the authority to shut that down? I don't see that in the proclamation anywhere.
Yeah, you don't see that in the proclamation, Kaylin. That's a good point. So guidance on school or district closure in response to an outbreak has also changed pretty dramatically since March. Our guidance from public health at this point in time doesn't really provide guidance for shutting down a school or a campus. What the latest guidance is, if a staff member or a student tests positive, then we need to determine the individuals with whom that staff or student shared 15 consecutive minutes within a 6-foot distance. And those folks would be asked to quarantine, which is much different than what was conventional wisdom earlier on in the pandemic. We are so the long and short of it is we don't have specifics on what would constitute grounds for closing a campus for a period of time to go on quarantine. But it appears as though if we were going to take that step, that we would need the approval not only of this body, but also of Polk County Health and the Department of Education.
And therefore would be at the mercy of their timeline.
The mercy of their timeline and the mercy of their assessment of health risk and not ours. Okay,
and then so just to say this out loud, based on that definition, in a classroom with desks 3 feet apart, if a teacher were to test positive, only the first 4 kids in the corner would be considered at risk, not the kids in the chain reaction next to them to the other part of the room.
Correct.
And I mean, just saying it out loud, I have to chuckle. That's a ludicrous definition based on everything we know about this virus. Is it will not stop because you make an aisle between 2 desks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so I don't know. I'm just going to get into it. I've for a long time believed that we should be starting this year 100% virtual. I think a hybrid model should be a phase 2 reopening, not a phase 1 reopening. I think based on all the public data that I've seen, there's no evidence that this is slowing in Polk. If the governor is looking at data and metrics and she's seen something we haven't, I'd really love to see that we have a much rosier picture than I've been led to believe. But I think it's silly for us to put hundreds and thousands of adults and kids into a place, wait till enough of them get sick, and then pull the plug, instead of just giving our staff time to prepare for online instruction over the next few weeks, get them bedded in. The hybrid instruction is going to look a lot like the virtual instruction anyway. If you can't move around the room, you can't kneel next to a kid, you can't share a book with them. This is silly, and the governor is making this incredibly difficult and just asking for our people to get sick and possibly
to
worse.
help him.
Well, it's I thank you for lifting that up, Kaylin, because the Polk County Health says that we're approaching the second peak of the first wave. You know, back in April, May, I was trying to plan for foolishly at the time when we shut down this spring. I was hoping that we were buying time for our community and for our state to get our legs under us and have a strategy for really addressing the pandemic in a meaningful way, and that we would be able to start school in the fall and then brace ourselves for going virtual at some point later in the fall or early winter when we anticipated the second wave coming. That our local medical community still anticipates that in sometime, in the end of October timeframe, kind of depending on weather largely, we'll have the second wave. But clearly, we're experiencing a surge right now that's supposed to continue at least until the start of school. And certainly if everybody's opening up schools at that time, that's going to hurt and not help the conditions in the community. As the board knows, I did recently share a message saying that I was concerned about opening up at all because of that information, and perhaps we did need to start fully virtual, but I haven't made that concrete recommendation yet, which still may be coming, but we have a larger question in that whether, first of all, we may not be able to make that decision of our own accord. We may need to get a few other parties to sign off on that to be able to do that and be in compliance with the new regulations. But even if we do, and we look at our hybrid plan as you put it, Kaylin, our phase 2, that phase 2 plan is currently does not comply with the new regs.
Yeah, and just to carry on that a little bit, like any decent numbers we've seen since this thing kicked off in March has been because we haven't been gathering in schools, and for a couple of weeks anyway, we weren't gathering in bars and restaurants and whatever. This is only going to kickstart it again once our schools all open, and even before that, when football season starts up in 2 weeks, which apparently we're allowed to do. Like I've been telling this to several people. Those locker rooms and practices are a germ nightmare on the best day, let alone when you start letting COVID run through them like this. I've not been optimistic about this since the start, and I'm increasingly pessimistic right now just because it's not looking great and we're not doing anything to fix it as a society. I mean,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is Terry, and I agree with Dawana that we need to proceed with submitting a waiver based on the plan that we have previously developed, rolled out, and discussed with our community, and now started the process of using as our platform for registration. I think that the governor's lack of leadership on this is astounding. And I am more than frustrated by the fact that she waited until most districts had already not only issued their plans, but had started registration to advance this proclamation, which I think is just unheard of, unprecedented. I think the other thing that I think we should do, however, is pending approval of our registration, begin whatever processes are necessary to come up with whatever our plan B, C, D, E, F needs to be, recognizing that it may be a long shot that we're going to get anything waived. I also have a question about what opportunity there may be for us as a district to litigate, and anything that may be within our purview relative to ways that we take legal action around this, given not only the lateness of the proclamation, but also the impact predicated on what we do and, quite frankly, don't know about the impacts of COVID and how it applies in the educational setting.
Thank you for lifting up legal. I have reached out to the legal counsel for the Council of the Great City Schools because they have a little more familiarity in attempting to support an action, a legal action at the state level, and we'll be following up with our local counsel as well on what grounds we might have for resisting this through the law.
So Tom, I just got a couple thoughts on my head too. I mean, my first thought is here, you did the job. You did exactly what was asked of you. The leadership team did exactly what was asked of them, and our building leadership is about to start doing exactly what was expected of us. You know, it's an impossible situation. We're balancing two competing values. Every one of us knows that our best possible educational method is in person with our kids. That's how teachers want to teach. That's how you want your district structured, and that's what the board knows that the community expects of us. And we're trying to do that to the greatest possible extent. But the value that competes with is how we keep our community safe and how we do not put our families at greater risk. And you listened, you did surveys, you came up with a plan that was detailed, and you've been talking to people. And I've been very appreciative of the amount of communication that's happened with our community. I've seemed to have these conversations once a day with people. And the most heartening part about it is this, is no matter what, whether it's a staff person or a family member, no matter what that conversation is, no matter where they're coming at it from me, they all understand this is an impossible situation. There's no silver bullet here that works for everybody, and that everybody wants to be back in the buildings as much as possible. But that's just not realistic right now. You've done the work. We need to abide by the work, and we need to keep moving forward. Start with the waiver, talk to the board about what that's going to take, keep us in the loop on what you're going to need from us, fully evaluate what our legal options are. And if that's a place that we'll have to go, then consult with your board on that. I think you'll have our support. But you know, as trustees of this organization, we have to be mindful of whatever risks are out there as well. And so the last thing that's on my mind on this thing is you've got meetings starting tomorrow with your leadership teams to start planning for a year, and start planning for a year based on the plan that we've constructed. What risk do we have of convening those teams and planning for something that we may not be able to pull off because of the state?
That's a great question. That's very much on my mind and Matt's mind and Noel's mind, the whole team's mind. A lot of what we need to do at the building level, a lot of what our building level leaders will need to execute will be similar with this plan or some other version of hybrid. So it won't be completely lost time. Frankly, the biggest problem is planning in a time of uncertainty doesn't breed confidence, and we have been navigating a large degree of uncertainty, and I think this board has done a really good job of helping us put stakes in the ground around which we can move forward, and we've been doing that, I think, very successfully. Having the rug pulled out from underneath us on Friday, July 17th, when we start school on August 26th, is hugely insulting, number one, because this is not easy work, and you don't just change your mind and a week later have a plan that's going to adequately serve 33,000 students and 5,000 staff. It can't be done. And the idea that it's just a school and that can happen is absolutely incredible to me that somebody could think that. What we need to guard against and make sure that we're being very affirmative with as we move forward with our leadership meetings this week is that, number one, we have been doing the right work in very difficult circumstances. We have the support of the board, and this is our plan moving forward. Can we say that with absolute certainty? Absolutely not. We can't. But we have to prepare. and which we've been doing, and any preparation we do for this plan, I shouldn't say any, but most of the preparation that we do at the building level for this plan is going to serve us, even if the plan changes a little bit. And again, as I stated earlier, that's more true at elementary than it is at high school. That's for sure. But just getting, you know, as Kaylin lifted up, teaching looks different under this hybrid plan than it did in our normal circumstances. It just does. The normal habits, positive habits that our teachers have about building relationships with kids, proximity is a huge piece of that. And we have to actively work against that. So many of the ways that our staff connect with our students and how our staff designs learning so that students are interacting with one another, which is really, you know, one of the foundational pieces of our schools for rigor. We have to kind of distance ourselves from that as well. So a lot of those, you know, sort of process things that are grounded in really good habits that our teachers have is going to be a big part of the work. In addition to, you know, designing protocols that meet the needs of particular buildings. So a lot of that is work that we need to do regardless of what the return to learn will look like. So it's not completely lost time. The biggest piece is, frankly, even if we knew we could apply for a waiver and get a waiver in very short order, I can tell you that all of us are nervous about what's the next shoe that's going to drop. As disappointed as I was with what we heard on Friday morning, I was at some level relieved that it wasn't worse. I'm not sure I answered your question, Rob.
No, I think you're fine. Yeah, I did. Another couple of things come to mind too as we talk about this. Do we have the ability to start the school year later if we need additional time to put a plan in place?
So actually, Matt and I discussed that Thursday. Just, you know, thinking, okay, the conditions are getting bad. Should we explore that option? To do that, we would so there's kind of a couple of things. One, I think all it would do is buy us some time, which is not insignificant. But the conditions are going to worsen at least through the end of August. And, you know, if schools are largely in the area, are largely back in session, we could expect those conditions to continue to worsen. And then we're talking about the anticipated second wave coming somewhere in the neighborhood of the end of October. So if we would delay the start of the school year, it would clearly be because we want to buy some time. The problem with that, if we do that very significantly, delay the start of school very significantly, is we would need a waiver from the Department of Education because we quickly run into what looks like a year-round school calendar. And likely we could get that at elementary and middle, but there's not a provision in Iowa code to do year-round schooling for high schools.
Okay. And then second question here is, as I've been trying to think this through since Friday, and you did a good job of laying it out. So we submitted the plan in July. The DE came out with their guidance, which was notable for the no mask requirement early in July. We were very public with what was in our plan and how we were moving forward. I'm just curious, did we hear from the Department of Education in between when we submitted our plan at the very beginning of July and Friday?
All that I've received in the superintendent's chair was just the the message that our plan was approved.
So the only communication that we got from the State Department of Education in the 2.5 weeks between when we submitted a plan that complied with state law and when the governor changed that interpretation was that they have approved our plan.
Yes.
Okay, I kind of anticipated the answer would be something like that. I think that moving forward for us, our value here is that we want to serve our kids in the safest possible way, and that the people on the ground know how to do that, and that they can do that. But it's not as simple as turning on a light switch. And we need, if the state wants to get engaged here, then they have to do so in a way that is going to be supportive and helpful to us, and do so in the proper interest of our kids with respect for the decisions that are made at the local level. That's all I've got to say on this.
I had a conversation. I got a phone call yesterday from Northbrook, Illinois, and it was I didn't recognize the number, and so I let it go to voicemail, assuming it wouldn't go to voicemail because it was a solicitor. And I didn't end up listening to. They actually did leave a message, and as it turns out, it was my childhood best friend, who we were inseparable until I moved to a different, until I moved across the state right before I turned 13, but we've stayed connected. He graduated first in his class from University of Iowa Law School and has had a successful 28-year career in law. And he is presently a lawyer in Northbrook, Illinois, and happens to be the president of the school board of the Waldorf school where his youngest son attends. His youngest son's 14. All three kids have gone through this small Waldorf school. They serve about 100 students, pre-K-12. They're anticipating that number to go down to about 60 this fall because of COVID concerns. And he was just wanted to bounce some ideas off of me about how we're approaching return to learn, because they have a high level of concern in their community. And one of the school districts in that area, the suburbs of Chicago, in which he resides, it's the third largest district in the state of Illinois, is actively encouraging families to enroll their students in private schools because of what Illinois has in place in their staff and physical plant limitations on how to safely serve their kids. I mean, I've never heard of a public school encouraging families to homeschool and to enroll in private school. That is not what our community needs. Our community needs their kids, our kids, to be in school 5 days a week. I absolutely believe that. But not at all costs. I want the economy to reopen, fully reopen, just as I think everyone does. And I want our families to be able to return to work knowing that their children are being well cared for. There are a lot of things that need to happen for that to be the case. And the schools don't control all of those factors. We have been placed in a wholly unfair position where there are folks that are looking at schools as the fulcrum of whether our economy opens or not, and that's not tenable. Our communities rely on our schools for education, but a whole host of other services, and I'm proud to be a part of providing that. But we just have to do our absolute best to ensure that while we're continuing the education, but providing the multiple other services that we do to our students and families, that we're not contributing to harm. I just feel very strongly that we really do need to keep health and safety as job one, because in a conversation with the Omaha superintendent about a month ago, she said she was going to tell her governor, we're going to go back 5 days a week, full steam, just like we did last fall, in the hopes that would wake him up enough to actually recognize, the predicament that we're in. Because if I will tell you, if we open up 5 days a week, full steam ahead like we did last fall, we will be forced to close very shortly thereafter, given the current conditions that we're facing. And so, we can be a penny wise and a pound foolish to keep, in the interest of reopening the economy. And I think we do more harm than good. And that's not even speaking to the impact it would have on the individuals that we're serving and that are providing the service. I want to remind the board, 28% of our staff are actively being treated for a health condition that puts them at higher risk for the negative impact of COVID-19. And that's not even including the age factor. We can't just dismiss that.
Tom, I wanted to circle back to just a couple things that we had talked about on Friday, just to see if you had any updates. And I guess the big one is, have you spoke with Polk County Health about what their recommended criteria would be for them to recommend virtual only for us as going through that process through the Department of Ed? Have you spoken with them about what that would look like?
No, I've called and emailed, but I think after, which I did immediately after our meeting on Friday, late Friday afternoon, but I wasn't able to get anybody on the phone, so I anticipate that happening on Monday.
Okay.
Unless I look out and get a response email today.
Yeah, if and when you hear about that, can you make sure that you loop the board in on what that criteria is? Mostly,
Absolutely.
I think what I'm trying to gauge is what's the support of Polk County Health in terms of once we start to feel like either this is unsafe for our students, or I can also see the possibility of this happening because I've heard from friends around the metro that this used to happen when they were kids in the metro of they would have too many teachers out with influenza and there just wouldn't be subs for them. And so they would have to close the school, for a few days until it gave everybody a chance to get better from influenza. So I just wanted to see how that might factor in with what Polk County Health would recommend too. And then have we looked at potentially shifting to year round for elementary and middle school? I know that doesn't help us with high school, but have we looked at that as far as for our kids there?
We've not. And that's certainly worthy of looking at. At first blush, it wouldn't. I guess that could potentially be helpful, but as we've talked about with this whole conversation, until as a community and as a state we decide to take, to have a comprehensive approach. It would buy us time, I guess, to our earlier discussion.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly worthy of giving some serious consideration to. Can you all see my screen?
I can, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to share this. This is from got this from Polk County Health on Thursday.
Tom, does somewhere in that PowerPoint happen to say what our current positivity rate is?
Can you see that?
Yeah, that's clear enough to me.
Yeah, there were I think 7 or 8 days in June when we exceeded a 5% positivity rate, and 6 out of the first 7 days in July we were over 8, and it's only gotten worse since then.
And what we're probably seeing is the after effects of the 4th of July, correct? Based on the amount of time it probably takes for this, or we're a little bit past, I guess, the 4th of July?
No, well, yeah, we are seeing that. That's pretty much in the mix, but that combined with an almost complete backing away of any gathering restrictions, it's just having a cumulative effect.
Yeah, and I also just want to raise up that this is changing all the time. And one thing that I've heard from some of the biggest naysayers is that children aren't impacted at this at a higher rate. But I have seen over the last few days a lot of research and news articles coming out in a couple different ways. One was a story in Texas where I think there's been, around 50 or more infants that have tested positive in the last little while. There's new research coming out that shows that those that are older than 10 are being impacted in similar ways as adults in terms of transmission and symptoms. And then anecdotally, there was a daycare center in Jackson County that closed down because an 18-month-old had a positive COVID test. And the reason I know that is my sister, that's where she sends her kids. And so she's now having to take vacation time off of work because her work will no longer allow her to work from home like they did in months previous. So I think, like, as board members, what I just want to raise up is I think that on behalf of the community, we see what the struggles are when our schools aren't open, but we also look at these numbers, and these are incredibly frustrating and disturbing. And I just wanted to, once again, I know Rob mentioned it a little bit, but I just wanted to raise up the local control issue of, I think school boards were created for a reason. In Iowa, I know we have more elected positions across our state than in many other places. And some of that is because it seems that in Iowa, one of our values is that we do value local control and the ability of folks on the ground to make the best decisions for their communities. And so I would just, I just want to raise that up. I know that point's not lost probably on anyone who's part of this call, but I think may be lost in the current atmosphere that the governor is forcing us to be in. So.
I have another question. I'm just looking at the data that you showed us and kind of where we're at right now with this virus. Could a possibility just be considering starting virtual? I mean, just 100% virtual? Because I'm thinking about this waiver process, not knowing how long that's going to take, or even what the process would look like for the Iowa Department of Public Health and the Department of Education needing to sign off as well, seeing if one process was going to move quicker than the other. Are you exploring even looking at just the possibility of us starting 100% virtual until we see this virus move in a way in which we maybe could go into our original plan?
Dwana, great point. And as I understand it, the process for starting the year 100% virtual would equate to applying for a waiver. So the only way we could, which that's new news as of Friday. But the only way we could start all virtual short of a waiver is if all of our families selected all virtual. Other than that, we need to get permission from the state through a waiver.
Madam Chair, I just had one other quick comment, and I think that we have to assume, and I hate making assumptions, but I really believe that this one likely is a valid one. But I think we have to assume that much of what our governor is doing is driven politically. And given the rhetoric and much of the commentary that we're hearing coming from our president and also our director of the Federal Department of Education, I just feel like what we're hearing is really a trickle down to the state level being applied now to our local school districts. And I have to assume that, quite frankly, at the end of the day, to the extent that a waiver is not allowed and a district decides to proceed based on the original plan that not only was submitted in compliance with the rules as they applied at the time, but also was signed off as being valid and approved, I think that we also have to assume that the bottom line in terms of how they would intend to address districts that went against whatever their rule of law is in any given moment is a reduction in funding. And I think that we need to be fully and completely prepared for what that may look like, given what we now know as sort of the rhetoric coming from the highest levels of government. But I think that in whatever planning we do, we also should take into consideration that if we are serious about the plan that we have advanced as being the one that we stand behind, not only for our community, but for the students in our district, we've got to be willing to put our money where our mouth is. And I would be willing to go to the wall on this issue because I think not only does it go against local control, but I also think it is really a matter of introducing politics at a time when safety should prevail. So I would be fully in support of trying to determine, to the extent that the response to us deciding if our waiver is not approved, to proceed as we have identified, being also prepared to understand what some financial implication of that might be, and whether or not we have the bandwidth and the wherewithal to withstand that based on us proceeding with the plan that we have advanced.
Thank you, Terry.
I'll just raise up too that, Tom, I have been overwhelmed by messages from our community, from our teachers, in regards to being supportive of us sticking to our current plan or going 100% virtual. They seem to think that the bare minimum of what is safe is our current plan, and that having our students in school more than that is just not acceptable. So it does seem, from what I've seen so far, and I've gotten more emails on this in the last, probably 36 hours than we did on the stadium in maybe the last like 3 months. They're probably about equal in number, it feels. So I think our community, by and large, is behind us in terms of moving forward with our current plan. So if that's helpful at all.
It is helpful.
So is it?
Sorry,
go ahead,
one more
Kirsten.
thing about the emails. I just want to say, if any of you are on this call and you have wrote us an email, I have not yet had the time to respond to each of those, but I plan to spend some time this evening and tomorrow just to let you know that we did receive your message. I also wanted to wait to hear from my board colleagues before responding to some of those, so I felt like I could respond as chair and not just a board member. So if you send us an email, I will be trying to follow up on all of those in the next 24 to 36 hours.
So the only thing I was gonna follow up on was, real quick, I just want to make sure that we maintain communication throughout this process, knowing that you guys are going to be working on a waiver, whatever those next steps are going to be, so that we keep informed. And if we have to continue to do regular work sessions around this, I think that this is extremely important. But, definitely sounds like there is group consensus to move forward with a waiver, and then alternatives should that need to be the case. But I want to lift up that to make sure that we continue these conversations, and I know that we will, but I don't know if that needs to be a regular schedule or just that we kind of at last minute pull those together when we need to.
Point taken. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, I guess with that in mind, if I still have a lot of questions and concerns about a hybrid model, just in terms of which adults are going to be in the buildings. Are they given that option? Who's being assigned? We can get into that later if there are more work sessions. So I'll leave that up to Tom. Do you want me to get into that now, or should I just plan to do it in some time?
We have a work session scheduled for later this month, specific to that topic, to the return to learn topic. Some of those questions we can't answer very, very well at all until the registration process is closer to complete, because that's going to determine a lot of the staffing related questions.
Okay. But yeah, like everyone else has said, well, the people who've said, I support a waiver, I support 100% online, and I support doing what we need to do to get that done.
I also just want to reemphasize something. It's a point that Rob and maybe some others have lifted up. I want our community to understand, our teachers want desperately to be back in their classroom with their students. That's unquestionable. So I just don't want people to have this impression that somehow teaching remotely is preferred or is easier. It is not. It is not, and I'll tell you that we're about as well equipped as a district to do that as anyone else. It's not. That's not how we should be doing things when we're able to be together. But it's just not a safe. It's just not safe to do that in reality right now. And as soon as conditions allow us to return to learn in person safely, nobody will be happier than our teachers. I can tell you that. I'm absolutely certain about that. But there's just, this elephant in the room that largely our state and federal government don't seem to want to meaningfully acknowledge.
And Tom, to address that a little bit, I've been talking to folks about this as an educator, as a teacher myself professionally. I take ALICE training, and I am fully equipped and have all the tools that I would need to keep my students as safe as possible in the given that there would be, an intruder into our school, into our building. And I compare it to that. With this, we don't have all the information that we need to know how to keep ourselves safe. We know about social distancing, but we don't have the space necessarily to keep everybody 6 feet apart in our schools. They weren't designed for that, as we've highlighted. So teachers are always willing to do what's best to keep kids safe. And I think right now that makes instruction look a little different, and that's hard. Heather, I think it said she'd been bouncing in and out. She put a comment in that she agreed with Terry and Dwana's in terms of we need to do what we need to do to keep our kids safe, and that that's our number one priority. So our kids and our staff. Is there anything else that anyone has related to the topic? I think what I'm hearing is a consensus around we proceed with pursuing a waiver, and that the board will help out in whatever way you need us to do that, Tom.
Thank you. I will get information regarding waivers and legal avenues to you as quickly as I have any concrete information to share. So something for sure tomorrow, and hopefully more on the legal front as well as the waiver front tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds great. Board colleagues, before I close us out for the afternoon, does anyone have anything else pressing related to this topic that you didn't get a chance to share? Okay.
Kirsten, if I may just make one more comment. Speaking as the parent of a 9-year-old, I can tell you that we need our teachers. We need our teachers. I'm a career educator. I'm not built to do this job and to support. I get it. I get where our parents are. I really do. And we'll get everybody back absolutely as soon as we safely can. That's all I wanted to acknowledge there.
I'm looking really forward to that celebration we'll get to have when this is over and we know we're all safe and we can all get together again in our schools and with our regular things. If no one has anything else, I just want to remind the board, we do have that work session on the 31st around Return to Learn. And Tom, do we have a follow-up this next week on some of our anti-racism work as well?
I believe that's August 4th.
Okay. I think it's all on our calendar. I know.
Yeah, it's on the calendar. I think it's August 4th.
Okay, great.
I was going to say, we have a work session this week on SEL, I believe.
Is it on SEL?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. I thought we had something this week. Thanks, Kelly. I couldn't pull my calendar up. So just watch your calendars, board members, for things that are upcoming. I know Erin's been keeping us on track really well. So thank you, everyone, for your time and attention this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks, everybody, for the last minute meeting. We appreciate the discussion.